And we'll list the messages using fetch, querying the database using a union statement to get messages both sent and received to and from the users. Let's get started. In the last video, we looked at how to add a form and to be able to send messages. And we had updated the query to insert into the marmalade messages table the from user, the to user, and the message. In our JavaScript, we updated how to select the user and store their user ID into local storage, so into the application local storage. And then we wrote the JavaScript fetch in order to be able to send the message. So we're fetching the send message PHP. We're including the from user ID, the to user ID, as well as the message from the form. And we're getting that back as a console log that confirms that we have indeed successfully sent a message. So now what we want to do is read the messages. And we've got our PHP already written. And you can see this is a select where we're selecting all the messages from the from user to the to user. And then we're joining that using a union to a second select that selects all the messages from the from user to the to user from the from user. So it's slightly reversed, and you can see where it's reversed is right here. It gets a little bit confusing because the two queries look exactly the same, but I'm reversing the from and to user here when we're binding the parameters, and that will return the messages between two users. So let's start off by creating a section where we can store our messages. And we'll put it here just above our form. So messages. And we'll create a section with an ID of messages. And in there we'll put a paragraph, and messages should go here. And so we'll upload that, and if we come back and refresh, we can see we've got our message section right here. So let's create a query selector, so we'll make it a constant. We'll call it message section. And we'll create a function called read messages. And we saw in the PHP that we're going to need to get the from user and the to user IDs. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll create the form data in order to be able to pass that to the fetch. And now let's copy this fetch from just above. And here we want to read message. We're getting the message data. And then once we get that data, what we'll want to do is to display messages. But let's just leave it at this for now. And make sure that this is working. Once we select a user, let's call that function. And you can see here I said read messages, but here I probably only put in the fetch read message. And now you can see here when we select on a user, we can see the messages. So if I click on Johnny, you can see I've got 4 messages that I've sent to Johnny, including the most recent one. So let's go ahead and display those messages on the page now. So we've already got a messages section object based on the query selector for our messages section. So the first thing that we'll do is just make sure that that's empty. And then we will loop through the data, so we'll create a for each. And we'll create an anonymous function here. And let's use an article to separate each message. It'll make it easier to modify using CSS later. And so we've passed in message as the parameter, and it should be .message, as you can see here from the console log. And then we just have to make sure that in the message section that we're appending that article. And now if we refresh and click on a message, display messages is not defined. Display messages. Let's refresh. And now you can see messages section is not defined. So it's just the message section. And now you can see as we select the various users, the messages both to and from will show up. We'll have to use our CSS in order to be able to differentiate between the messages that we send and the messages that we receive. So in this video, we took a query that already existed that selects the messages both to and from the user who's signed in and the user that they've selected. And then we get the user IDs from our local storage, send them off using fetch, and we read those messages back and display the messages on the page. In the next video, we'll look at how to tie all these things together so that the user experience is both clear and pleasant. I hope this helps.